You are watching the world 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bawa. Let's begin with the top headlines we're tracking currently. The Trump administration followed through on its threat to pull federal funding from Harvard University hours after the oldest and richest US college refused to agree to a list of government demands. One of the first executive orders that Donald Trump signed when he assumed office as US president was to declare a national emergency along the southern border of the US. That order had a rider to it that President Trump might invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807 and possibly deploy the military on US soil on the 20th of April. China's President Xi Jinping called for stronger ties with Vietnam on trade and supply chains amid disruptions caused by US tariffs as he attended the signing in Hanoi of dozens of cooperation agreements between the two communist-run nations. After visiting the Gurdwara with his wife, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has been accused of pandering to Sikhs on Vaisakhi. From Texas to the stars and back again, well, 6 women boarded Blue Origin's new Shepard rocket, marking the first all-female flight since 1963. That flight saw cosmonaut Valentina Tereshkova orbit Earth 48 times on a solo mission lasting 3 days. This one saw Katy, a journalist, and also Jeff Bezos' fiance.
I got you, Flynn. Proud of you.
The big headline we're tracking currently, the Trump administration followed through on its threat to pull federal funding from Harvard University hours after the oldest and richest US college refused to agree to a list of government demands. The government froze $2.2 billion of multi-year grants to Harvard, according to the Joint Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism, following a defiant message from the school's president saying that it would not surrender its independence or its constitutional rights. The task force wrote, Harvard's statement reinforces the troubling entitlement mindset that is endemic in our nation's most prestigious universities and colleges, that federal investment does not come with the responsibility to uphold civil rights laws. But the Trump administration last month said it was scrutinizing as much as $9 billion in federal grants and contracts to Harvard as part of its efforts to combat anti-Semitism on US campuses. Moving on, one of the first executive orders that Donald Trump had signed when he assumed office as US president was to declare a national emergency along the southern border of the United States. That order had a rider to it that President Trump might invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807 and possibly deploy the military on US soil on the 20th of April, which is 90 days after the executive order was signed. The rider clause in President Trump's executive order on the 20th of January stated that within 90 days of the date of this proclamation, the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of Homeland Security shall submit a joint report to the President about the conditions at the southern border of the US and any recommendations regarding additional actions that may be necessary to obtain complete operational control of the southern border, including whether to invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807. In other news, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg took the stand in a US antitrust trial that could force the tech giant to split up, potentially reshaping the global social media landscape. Now, the government alleges that Meta amassed a monopoly by acquiring Instagram and WhatsApp, though the company argues it still faces plenty of competition from rivals. Meta has embarked on a recent lobbying blitz aimed at pushing US President Donald Trump to intervene and settle the suit. But some Trump officials have recently sought to stiffen the president's spine against Meta. Some analysts will tell you that the rush by Zuckerberg and other tech figures to buy their way into the new administration has not always proven effective. But Vishal has been tracking the finer developments for us. He joins us live at the moment. Vishal, so this case marks the first significant opportunity for Donald Trump's administration to follow through on the president's campaign promise to take on big tech?
Well, that is correct. It was during his first term that this case was filed, and it gained a lot of steam over the years, but it's been a while since any action has been taken. And this is the beginning of the biggest trial. This is the biggest antitrust trial in the history of any big tech company. So it has a lot of media gaze, a lot of interest in it, and Meta has gone on to say that these allegations are unfounded and they're sort of biased because they did not kill competition by buying these companies. In effect, they made the user experience, the consumer experience way better than it was before. So that is what the counter from the Meta company is. But FTC continues to say that it was a buy or bury tactic from Meta that enabled it to buy these companies in some inflated amount. These deals they went through about a decade ago. It was in 2012 that Instagram was bought by Meta, and in 2014 that WhatsApp was bought by Meta. Both really big time deals. Both these deals are in focus due to this trial, and Meta could be forced to sell Instagram, could be forced to divest a lot of these companies if the ruling goes through not in favor of Meta. So that will have to be seen, because we all know that both Instagram and WhatsApp, together with Meta, and Facebook, they control a majority of the social media market, even though Facebook, Meta continues to say that it has competition in the market from YouTube, from other companies such as TikTok. But a lot of experts have said that it has a monopoly on the market, and that is what FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, is looking to counter. It wants Meta to not have that kind of hold on the market. So that is what will be interesting to be seen.
Thanks so much, Vishal, as always, for taking us through the latest developments. Well, let's turn our attention now to Zelensky urging Donald Trump to visit Ukraine to see the devastation caused by Russia's invasion, while the US president appeared to play down Moscow's latest deadly attack, which is the worst on civilians this year, calling it a mistake. International leaders condemned Russia's strike on the center of the Ukrainian city of Sumy on Sunday, which killed 34 people, including children. 2 ballistic missiles hit as people made their way to church for Palm Sunday. Asked about Russia's attack on civilians, Trump said he was trying to get the war stopped. But for further clarity on the matter, joining us live from Washington, D.C. at the moment, Ray Locker. Ray, always a pleasure to have you on the show. How effective would you say Zelensky's approach has been to engaging skeptical Western leaders? Is appealing to their conscience enough, or is Ukraine losing ground in the battle for sustained international support?
Well, they're losing ground in terms of getting sustained U.S. support. I think other people around the world are rallying behind Ukraine, but it is a day in, day out battle of uncertainty with the Trump administration. You don't know who you're going to get any day with Donald Trump, as we've seen with the tariffs.
Ray, America's role, Trump has repeatedly claimed this would never have started if he was president. But would you say this is a fair statement, or would you argue that it's dangerous revisionism that downplays Putin's responsibility in this entire invasion?
Oh, I think it's dangerous revisionism that downplays Putin's responsibility. Absolutely. I mean, we don't know what would have happened if Trump had been president in 2022. I mean, I think the world would be a much worse place, as we're seeing now, when he's operating without any guardrails. The fact is, this was an aggressive act by Russia, attacking a country that had not done anything to warrant being attacked. And Trump is all over the map on this. He was going to end the war on his first day as president. Hasn't happened.
Right.
You know, he was going to push Zelensky this way, push Putin. We don't know what he's doing. And you know, if I'm Vladimir Putin, I'm going to do whatever I want to, because he's not going to stop me.
Right. Meanwhile, Russia accuses Ukraine of using civilians as human shields. This actually mirrors familiar Kremlin talking points. Do you agree that we're seeing a dangerous shift in how civilian deaths are now framed and accepted in modern warfare?
Well, I mean, it's Vladimir Putin. He's going to say whatever he wants. Are you a human shield if you're going to church on Palm Sunday?
Absolutely.
Who are you shielding, you know? I mean, you're just going about your daily life, and you're callously murdered by a dictatorial regime, period. You know, Putin can say whatever he wants, but anybody who's watching it knows what's really happening.
Ray, it's always a pleasure to hear your views. Thank you so much for joining us. We will, of course, stay in touch with you for regular updates. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has claimed that Iran has been intentionally delaying a nuclear deal with the United States. He cautioned Tehran against a drive for a nuclear weapon, saying it may have to face a military strike if it didn't desist from its activities. Iran and the United States officials have met in Oman, as we covered, and held positive and constructive talks just last week on Saturday. A second round is scheduled for Saturday as well. Donald Trump said that Tehran must forego the concept of having a nuclear weapon. In fact, we have a reaction lined up for you. Listen in.
Them on Saturday. We have another meeting scheduled next Saturday. I said, that's a long time. You know, that's a long time. So I think they might be tapping us along. But Iran has to get rid of the concept of a nuclear weapon. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. He can't have a nuclear weapon. Nobody can have, we can't have anybody having nuclear weapons, you know? We can't have nuclear weapons. And I think they're tapping us along because we're so used to dealing with stupid people in this country. Only thing is, one thing, simple, it's really simple, they can't have a nuclear weapon. And they gotta go fast because they're fairly close to having one. And they're not gonna have one. And if we have to do something very harsh, we'll do it. And I'm not doing it for us, I'm doing it for the world. And these are radicalized people, and they cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Meanwhile, the Oval Office meeting between Donald Trump and El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele involved a lot of criminals and also the Maryland father who was mistakenly sent to El Salvador, I beg your pardon, along with prisoners owing to an administrative error. The Supreme Court has ordered that Quilma Abrego Garcia has to be returned to the US, but Monday's meeting between Trump and Bukele made it clear that no one is concerned about that. In fact, Trump wants to send US prisoners to El Salvador if the law permits. Just listen in.
If it's a homegrown criminal, I have no problem. Now, we're studying the laws right now. Pam is studying. If we can do that, that's good. And I'm talking about violent people. I'm talking about really bad people. Really bad people. Every bit as bad as the ones coming in. And I made the statement when I heard about this a long time ago now, 4 years ago. When I heard that this guy was having open borders, I said every single criminal from all over the world is going to be dumped into our country. And that's what happened. Jails, the jails of the Congo were emptied out. The jails of Venezuela were emptied out. And you know what happened? Their crime went way down.
Well, let's switch tracks now. China's President Xi Jinping has called for stronger ties with Vietnam on trade and supply chains amid disruptions caused by US tariffs as he attended in Hanoi the signing of dozens of cooperation agreements between the two communist-run nations. US President Trump said that China and Vietnam were meeting to figure out how to harm the US. But the visit, planned for weeks and part of a wider trip in Southeast Asia, comes as Beijing faces 145% US duties, while Vietnam is negotiating a reduction of threatened US tariffs of 46% that would otherwise apply in July after a global moratorium expires. In other news, the broadcast journalist Gayle King and the singer Katy Perry made a brief trip into space on a flight operated by Jeff Bezos' private company Blue Origin. This was the first time an all-female crew had been to space since 1963, and this flight on Blue Origin's new Shepard rocket lasted 10 minutes and 21 seconds and took off from Blue Origin's launch site, one in West Texas. Now, flights on the new Shepard rocket, which provide for a few minutes of weightlessness, do not have a pilot, you must note. Meanwhile, some critics have chafed at the suggestion that this all-female crew you see represented a moment of feminist progress. But the new Shepard program, which is a centerpiece of Blue Origin's space tourism business, is an avenue for the wealthy, the powerful, and well-connected to go to space.
Oh, the moon! You guys, I have to tell you, look at the moon. That's amazing.
Meanwhile, some will still tell you that space is for everyone to explore and technology for everyone's benefit. This is something that the European Union's Special Envoy for Space has also emphasized. Currently, she's in New Delhi to explore possibilities and further enhance cooperation in the space sector between India and Europe. Her visit to India comes weeks after the historic and landmark visit by European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen and the EU College of Commissioners. Listen in.
In terms of India, in terms of our context, we have a very robust space program, and we were one of the early nations actually to move into the space programs. So it is quite a well-developed space program. But EU has collaborated with us. We have had technological exchanges with the European Union. How do you think, you intensify that cooperation going forward with those famous names you said, Galileo and
Copernicus. Yeah.
How do you intensify that cooperation?
I think that is something that we need to have a discussion about with the Indian counterparts, where we bring all actors together on one table. My focus is on security and defense, but my colleagues at the European Commission very much focus on the European Space Program. And on the Indian side, you have quite a number of interlocutors as well, civilian and defense. So my objective will be that we can come to agreement on how to engage jointly on how we can improve that cooperation that's already going on. So that will be setting up such a dialogue. Those can be very big things. You need a lot of people, and that means you also need a lot of preparation to get it right. Because it may seem easy, let's have a dialogue. We are having a dialogue. But between governments and with such a wide scope, it gets more complicated than that.
Setting up of a dialogue, you said that itself is a big task. But eventually those dialogues need to yield something.
Yes, yeah. But you can't do something if you don't first agree on it. But really, we are really very ready to become concrete very quickly once we have established, what are the common interests are and where we have the best scope of moving forward. We really see this as a process that should yield results as soon as possible. In space we can't wait. Things are happening so fast. We shouldn't just sit there and wait for other countries to do it for us.
Also, since you look at the defense and security aspect of it, the challenges that we have in the space, like one of the challenges today is some of our military aircraft on the Chinese border were facing a spoofing problem that you mentioned. Now, we don't know who the actor is behind it, right? But it was on the Chinese frontier. The challenges are evolving, and so should be the responses. Yes. And do you think that the nation states particularly are in a position that they can find a quick response to these challenges, and then probably those responses can be codified for a global same platform usage?
That will be the ultimate objective. I think we, as international community, we already take a big step if we can agree on a norm. Like spoofing is not okay, for example. And that we then develop the mechanisms for attribution, which can be very, very complicated because all countries will need to accept the results. But then if you have this format to discuss internationally, like with other treaties, you could set up a mechanism indeed for a response. And when I'm talking response, I speak of a diplomatic response, right? Not of a military response. That's not how the EU works.
Well, news and updates continue in a moment right after this very short break. Do stay tuned. Well, Hungary's parliament has passed an amendment to the constitution that allows the government to ban public events by LGBTQ communities, a decision that legal scholars and critics are calling another step towards authoritarianism. The amendment declares that children's rights to moral, physical and spiritual development supersede any right other than the right to life, including the right to peacefully assemble. And with that, let's turn our attention to a quick update from Canada, where Prime Minister Mark Carney has been accused of pandering to Sikhs on Vaisakhi. He's actually facing online outrage after attending a Vaisakhi event. He was seen in a gurdwara along with his wife, also making langar, serving langar, eating the langar, but he's been criticized for ignoring Palm Sunday, and instead he's been accused of pandering to Sikhs on Vaisakhi. As we've been covering, Belgium police has arrested Mehul Choksi, but there is a strong possibility that Mehul Choksi will approach higher authorities to challenge his extradition to India. He has been on the run from the law for 7 full years. Take a look at the finer developments.
Fugitive diamond merchant Mehul Choksi under arrest in Belgium. The police in Belgium have arrested Choksi following an extradition request by Indian probe agencies for his alleged involvement in the 13,500 crore rupees Punjab National Bank scam case. Belgian Justice Department confirmed the arrest to NDTV.
My client was taken to custody on Saturday, and at the moment he is in prison. And there the procedure is not to apply for bail. The procedure is to apply for file an appeal. And during that appeal, the request is made that he should not be kept in detention. He should be permitted to defend himself, oppose the extradition request while not being in custody.
Choksi was reportedly preparing to flee to Switzerland under the guise of seeking medical treatment when he was arrested. The arrest marks a major breakthrough in a relentless 7-year pursuit by Indian authorities across 3 countries. Choksi had obtained an F residency card in Belgium in November last year by using forged documents, allegedly involving his wife Preeti Choksi, a Belgian national. He falsely cited humanitarian grounds and critical medical conditions to gain the residency, all while concealing his dual citizenship status. He remains both an Indian and Antiguan citizen.
Belgian Justice Ministry has written back to NDTV on our request and confirmed 2 things: that Mehul Choksi, fugitive economic offender accused of swindling multiple billion rupees from Indian public sector banks, is in the custody of the Belgium authorities, and they are actively working on an extradition request that they have received from the government of India based on the strength of an Interpol Red Corner notice issued by the Central Bureau of Investigation.
This is not Choksi's first run-in with the international law enforcement. In 2021, he was arrested in Dominica for illegal entry, triggering a dramatic sequence of legal battles. The CBI was dispatched to secure his extradition, but his lawyers successfully argued for his return to Antigua for medical reasons. The British Queen's Privy Council later ruled in his favour, and he was flown back to Antigua after spending 51 days in jail. Despite multiple setbacks, Indian authorities persisted. They learned of Choksi's presence in Belgium last year and promptly alerted local agencies, sharing a comprehensive dossier detailing his role in the massive bank fraud. Belgian police arrested him shortly after, preventing what would have been another escape, this time to Switzerland. Choksi has previously offered to cooperate with Indian agencies via video conferencing, citing his health and inability to travel. However, this proposal was rejected. With this latest arrest, India appears to be inching closer to bringing fugitive businessmen back to face trial on home soil. Your report, NDTV.
Well, in other news, a judge in Bangladesh has issued an arrest warrant for British MP Tulip Siddiq, the niece of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, in connection with a corruption case involving state-owned land, according to a report. But the former city minister, Tulip Siddiq, has said an arrest warrant issued against her in Bangladesh over allegations she illegally received a plot of land from her aunt. The country's ousted former Prime Minister is a politically motivated smear campaign. In fact, the Hampstead and Highgate MP said no one from Bangladesh authorities has contacted her, and the entire time they've done a trial by media. Thank you for investing your time and watching this edition of The World 24/7. As always, we'll keep tracking the latest for you. Do stay tuned.